There is a rule everyone follows without realizing it. It sounds polite, reasonable, even moral. Break it. And people lean forward when you speak. Obey it. And you will always be explained away. You've seen this. Someone speaks less than you, knows less than you, yet the room adjusts around them. Doors open, voices soften, attention sharpens, while you stay invisible, not because you lack value, but because you're obeying a rule that quietly disqualifies you from authority. Today, we expose it. You were taught something early. Be agreeable, be clear, be fair, explain yourself. Make sure people understand your intentions. Make sure no one misinterprets you. So you clarify, you justify, you soften your words, you answer questions you weren't asked, you defend ideas that weren't attacked. And you think this makes you mature, but watch closely. The men who are taken seriously do something different. They leave space. They do not rush to be understood. They do not rescue conversations from discomfort. They do not explain their motives. And because of that, they are assumed to have power. The rule you were taught is this: if you don't explain yourself, people will misunderstand you. That rule sounds harmless. It is not. Every explanation has a price. When you explain yourself, you imply uncertainty. When you justify your choices, you imply permission is required. When you clarify your intentions, you imply your intentions are negotiable. People don't listen to explanations the way you think they do. They don't hear logic. They hear hierarchy. Subconsciously, they ask one question: why does he need me to understand this? Power never answers that question. Power lets silence do the work. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The more you explain yourself, the more people feel entitled to judge you. Human beings are not wired for fairness. They are wired for signals. Signals of certainty. Signals of calm. Signals of self-trust. When someone explains too much, the mind assumes weakness, not because it's rational, but because it's ancient. In early social groups, leaders did not persuade. They decided. They did not clarify. They acted. Uncertainty spread downward. Certainty spread upward. This instinct never left us. You can see it everywhere. The person who over-explains loses authority. The person who pauses gains it. The one who fills silence feels smaller. The one who lets silence stretch becomes larger. This is not about arrogance. It is about psychological gravity, and gravity does not argue. 5 centuries ago, a political observer wrote something that terrified polite society, not because it was cruel, but because it was accurate. Machiavelli understood one thing. Most people still resist. People do not follow virtue, they follow perception. They do not reward transparency, they reward strength, and strength is often quiet. Machiavelli never advised endless explanation. He warned against it. Because the ruler who explains himself too often becomes accountable to opinions, not outcomes. Silence is not emptiness. It is pressure. When you stop explaining, the room does something interesting. It fills the gap for you. People assign meaning. They assume intention. They project authority. And most importantly, they adjust their behavior. You don't need to convince people you are serious. You need to remove the behaviors that signal you are not. Here is the rule that keeps you from being taken seriously. Never explain yourself to people who have not earned the explanation. That's it. Simple, uncomfortable, transformational. Most people do the opposite. They explain to everyone, friends, strangers, critics, observers, and by doing so they collapse their own status. Explanation should be rare, and rarity creates value. Rule 1. Explanation. As a reward, authority treats explanation as currency. You do not hand it out freely. You give it intentionally. If someone questions you without leverage, they don't get clarity, they get calm, they get stillness, they get nothing. This unsettles them. Because now the power dynamic has reversed. They want something from you, and you are not rushing to give it. Rule 2. Silence forces respect. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it. They assume silence equals awkwardness. But silence is only awkward for the insecure. When you remain silent after a challenge, the other person must confront themselves. They begin to wonder, did I cross a line? Was that question inappropriate? Why isn't he reacting? You didn't assert dominance, you withdrew access, and that is far more powerful. Rule 3. Decisions require no defense. A decision that requires defense is already weak. Strong decisions are stated once, then embodied. If someone asks why, you don't justify, you acknowledge, you move on. Because that's what I chose. Nothing more. The moment you add reasons, you invite negotiation. Power does not negotiate its existence. Here's what most people don't want to admit. They explain themselves because they want approval. Not consciously, but emotionally. They want to be seen as reasonable, fair, good. But authority does not come from being liked. It comes from being unalterable. This is the trade-off. You cannot be deeply approved of and deeply respected at the same time. At some point, you choose. Breaking this rule will feel wrong at first. Your nervous system will resist. You'll feel rude, cold, unfair. That's conditioning. You were trained to equate explanation with kindness, but kindness without boundaries becomes submission, and submission never earns respect. Machiavellian thinking is not about cruelty, it is about clarity. There will be a moment, quiet, subtle, where you stop explaining. A colleague questions you. You pause. You look at them. You answer with fewer words than expected. And something changes. The room recalibrates. They speak differently to you next time. They ask instead of demand. They listen instead of interrupt. Not because you asserted power, but because you stopped giving it away. Real authority is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't defend. It doesn't correct every misunderstanding. It lets time reveal truth. The most powerful people are not the loudest. They are the least reactive. They are not trying to win conversations. They are selecting which ones deserve participation. If you want to be taken seriously, stop auditioning for understanding. Let people sit with uncertainty. Let them wonder. Let them adjust. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself to everyone, only the right people remain close. And those are the only ones whose understanding ever mattered. Silence is not weakness. It is restraint. And restraint is power.